Is the contest for quarterback one between Caleb Williams and Drake Maye closer than we might think? That's the question. Caleb Williams, the quarterback from USC, has been lauded as one of the best quarterback prospects for a generation, but is North Carolina's Drake Maye closer to him in draft value than we maybe first thought? The reason for this discussion is that there's been a lot of talk recently, especially after Caleb Williams had a pretty bad performance against Notre Dame where he threw 3 interceptions, on whether he's potentially going a little bit overrated. And that has led to some discussion as to whether Drake Maye from UNC, as maybe who hasn't put a foot wrong so far in 2023, is maybe ahead of him as quarterback one. Stu, kick us off. What are your opening thoughts here?
For all of you who listened to our last podcast when we did the mock draft, and if you haven't, go and have a listen to it now, and shame on you. I picked Drake Maye as a first overall pick in that draft. I think that the competition is closer than people may wish to admit at times. For me, and this, please, if you listen, don't take this the wrong way. I think whoever is going to draft Caleb Williams might be disappointed, and that's not. And I'll tell you why I think that. Caleb Williams has been talked about as the next coming of Patrick Mahomes. You've seen the comparisons by a lot of people, for the stylistic value he has, the way he plays the game. Patrick Mahomes, for me, is so far ahead of nearly every NFL quarterback that there is. For Caleb Williams to be as good as Patrick Mahomes, he's going to have to be an awful lot better than an awful lot of very, very good quarterbacks. The likes of Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, all these guys, you could go on and on about quarterbacks who are really very good, but for him to be touching the level of Patrick Mahomes, he's going to have to be extremely special, and people that special are extremely rare. That's not to say that he couldn't get there, but if you're expecting that, and that's what your only option is going to be when you draft him, if he's Patrick Mahomes and nothing for you, I think that you might be setting yourself up for disappointment. Williams has had his ups and downs recently. He's had his naysayers as well, with a lot of chat you'll see about he has come up short against the better teams at times. That's not all on Caleb Williams. As we know, we can have great college quarterbacks who aren't in the best teams. So we can't lay the whole thing on his door. Drake Maye has continued to have a steady and clear progress this year. He's improved a lot of the things we wanted to see him improved. So I think that whilst there was a gap, it's narrowed and its potential to narrow further.
Yeah, so I think you see things fairly similar to me in the way that you spoke there, that this conversation is happening more because of the narrative around Caleb Williams than it is the narrative around Drake Maye. I say that this debate is being caused because of the discord around Caleb Williams, and I think that's what I wanted to touch on mostly as well, because, well, let's start by saying that both of these quarterbacks are really, really good prospects, right? And this isn't, we're not knocking either of them here, whether it's Caleb Williams or Drake Maye. We're just trying to find and give some type of context around the debate. But to start with, a lot of this talk around Caleb Williams comes from, I think, polarization on social media and in sports media, which naturally happens these days. Some people on socials are going to say he's the greatest quarterback, college quarterback of all time. Others are going to say he's destined for a bust. That's just the nature of it. The reality is neither of them are true. Caleb Williams is an excellent prospect, the best we've seen probably in some time, but he's by no means a no faults, can't miss, perfect prospect, because that just doesn't happen. If it did, the NFL draft wouldn't be what it is, and it'd be a lot less entertaining, and we wouldn't be sat here doing this if it was that easy. Then you get the discord around him even amplified even more because of that expectation and the standards that Caleb Williams is being held to, which are completely unrealistic. When you see some analysts attaching generational prospect labels to him, then naturally Caleb Williams is going to be held to a completely different standard to the rest of the quarterbacks in this class. And then for him to be seen as that generational prospect for multiple years now, and to expect him to have maintained that level of standard and level of hype throughout his college career, it just isn't going to happen. And it's extremely wrong for us to have expected or even demanded that to have happened.
Absolutely. And I think that what we sometimes forget as well is these are young guys who are finding their way through life in general. If you think back, much longer for me than it was for you, but when you're 20, 21, there's so much happening in your life, so much different things going on as well. It's not just football. And these guys are growing as people, as adults. They have to, yes, they're at college, they're having to do college work as well. And sometimes people just have off days. I mean, Caleb Williams has been, you're right, you talk a lot about the social media. You'll put someone have 6 throws of Caleb Williams, go, this is the best quarterback we've ever seen, and then the next week, oh, he's trash. He's had 3 interceptions. I'm sure there's been games, if you look through history, the likes of Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, all these guys have had 3 interception games. It doesn't mean that they're dreadful. And I think that there's so much swing and variance goes around draft circle. Maybe not so much with the teams. I think they are able to drown out a lot of that chatter. But in draft circles, people just go wild on their hyperbole, and I think that can be really difficult for people to get their head round too.
Yeah, and the expectation that has been put on him, that only happens because of how good of a prospect Caleb Williams is, right? That he has the potential to be a different level of player when he gets to the NFL. So we naturally hold him to a higher standard than we do for those who are going to be a lower level pick. And that only happens because we think that he has the potential to be in the same kind of vein as a Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow when they were coming out, because he has the talent to be that what we expect of him is just completely different to what we expect of Drake Maye. The level of coming into the season, the level of standard, level of hype that we put on, and the expectations, you can't compare the two, because Caleb Williams was already the Heisman Trophy winner and was expected to repeat the exact same success that he had.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, and we talk about levels of being good. I mean, if we watch on an NFL on a Sunday, and this is not to say that this is who the prospects I'm comparing them to, not at all, but pick a quarterback who Daniel Jones having a really good game is not the same as Patrick Mahomes having a really good game.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what you're talking about. The standards that they set are, and the expectation levels for people are different. And I think that what we're trying to do here is we're trying to back up the thought that we think that Caleb Williams is good without saying that Drake Maye isn't, because I think that Drake Maye has made up ground this year, and there will be teams who have that. There'll be teams who will have a wide gap still, I think, but there will be teams who will have different thresholds, different metrics, different things that they look at. These guys haven't gone through any interview processing yet, who will at some point potentially have Drake Maye higher on the board.
Yeah. And it comes down to narrative as well, right? That there's naturally momentum and narrative swings throughout the draft cycle, and we're just going through the last couple of weeks a part where the narrative has been written on Caleb Williams that he hasn't shown it lately, and that's where the narrative changes. The momentum can so easily swing by him just having an amazing couple of games, and that narrative and momentum will just flip. And what we've seen in 2023 is that the concerns that we maybe had in the summer, of him being able to play in structure, and the question marks we had around pressure, all that's happened is they've been amplified a little bit in 2023. We always knew that Caleb Williams, that you have to take the good and the bad, and that is where the expectations come in, where if you're just watching the highlights reel, then absolutely fantastic. But the type of player he is, if you want to have those highlight reel type plays, where he takes a risk and it comes off, you also have to acknowledge that sometimes that's going to go wrong. It's not going to come off every single time, and you can't overreact, as you were saying, due to just a couple of bad games. But what we've seen is maybe a reoccurring theme from Williams this season, where the struggles have kept on happening from game to game, and they're being amplified. You just take the in structure plays, for instance, he can too quickly look to move out of the pocket this season, and that's the type of player he is, because that's where he succeeds. But it's also meant that he's held the ball for far too long. So so far in 2023, his average time before throwing is just over 3 seconds. That just isn't going to fly in the NFL.
It's just going to get him killed.
The number needs to drop considerably before we can talk about that type of style of play translating to the NFL. Then you add in what he's been doing in the short game, and how you play the short areas is such a big part of NFL game plans these days, where just simply reading and distributing the football is a huge part of playbooks, and you simply just have to be able to do it before you can have those off-platform plays. You can't make a living from these highlight reel plays. Being able to do them is a luxury that, to have those outstanding creative plays that Caleb Williams has, you first have to do the fundamentals right, and you have to be able to work within structure, and you have to be able to control the game, and then you can unleash the kind of the Superman and the superpowers that he has. For me, he isn't reading the middle of the field correctly, and that's something that's carried over from the summer, where sometimes he just completely ignores over the middle altogether, and you can't be successful in the NFL going off script every play. You have to be able to do what your coach says and what the play caller is asking you to do. You can't just go off platform constantly. When he does, it's brilliant, but he hasn't shown so far in 2023 that he is doing it consistently. Do I think he can do it? Absolutely, but that doesn't mean it should be ignored completely. And then the second thing, sorry, Stu, I'll let you come in, is the play when pressured is a massive thing at the moment. Our friend Trevor Sycamore, who we've had on the pod before from PFF, shared that Caleb Williams in 2022 was the top-ranked college football quarterback when pressured. This season, 2023, he's number 175, which is the 5th worst in college football. You can come up with all the excuses that you want, where he's playing in a team that's void of talent, or he's a system, or whatever. And USC's been hyped because of him, not the talent around him. But he has to take his equal share of responsibility, and that's where the standard comes in, right? That Williams was never going to play to that same standard that we saw of him when he won the Heisman Trophy last year. He wasn't going to be the top performing quarterback in all these metrics again. It was just always extremely unlikely. You just hoped that he'd answered some of the questions that we maybe had. Finally, for me, before I go over, because this is the last thing that I wanted to mention on this, is that Caleb Williams is my top-rated quarterback. I think he's unbelievable, and no one is as big a fan of Caleb Williams than I've been. But I just think we have to be honest about him not being perfect. He's great. He's maybe elite, but he isn't perfect. No one is. As you said before, Stu, you just have to let these kids work it out, and it's about having a fair debate around them.
Yeah, the point that you touched on about questions that we had in the summer, I think they're still the same questions. I don't think that. Yeah. I don't think that he's answered the questions that we had of Caleb Williams, but I don't think that he has regressed so far in the things that he's very, very good at either.
Yeah.
I think that it's so difficult to build on such a good season that he had in winning the Heisman to have an even better season the next year. So having the same questions, I don't think is necessarily a negative thing either. It's just that there's maybe there is things as well. I think when you're such a hyped quarterback, when you're a Heisman winner, you sometimes, some players feel that they have to put the team on the back all the time. And that, okay, we're in this difficult situation, right, I'm going to scramble out and launch a 50-yarder down the field, but actually a little screen pass to that or a check down to your running back is going to be perfectly fine in this situation. Take your 3-4 yards and then just move on from there. And I think that's maybe he's struggling to find that balance about, I've got to put this team on my back, with actually I've just got to play good, effective football.
Yeah, balance is completely right there. That's the word, because I guess that's what I was getting at. That we didn't need to see more of these highlight reel plays. We knew what he could do. What we wanted to see was him being able to work the game a little bit better, stay in structure, control the play, go through his reads, and having the balance between that and out of structure, which has maybe swayed a little bit too much to out of structure. That we just wanted, what we wanted to see was in how he did it inside structure, and we just haven't seen it yet. We've still got time, we still might. We've spoke a lot about Caleb Williams. I suppose we should also speak about Drake Maye. He hasn't really put a foot wrong this season, has he?
I think that's where we need to start at. Drake Maye has just shown that he can be an effective quarterback, and I think that was something that we wanted him to be seen as. We knew he had all the talent, he had the size, he's got the speed, he's got the arm strength, he looks like a prototypical quarterback, he's intelligent, but it's can he put that all together and be consistent, make less mistakes, have better decision making, and I think he has shown that he's improved in all those areas as the college season has gone on. There's still a lot of games to go, and there is potential that he could have his Caleb Williams moment where he has his games where he doesn't look as good. But I think it's the progression that I think of of Drake Maye rather than the regression of Caleb Williams that has brought these two closer together.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what we're saying is the way the season's panned out, Drake Maye is a lot closer to Caleb Williams than maybe we thought or expected to in preseason. We are only in October, about to go into November. There's a chance that this circles all the way back round and a gap opens again, because that's naturally how draft cycles work, that it's a cycle and we'll go through everything and who knows. But right now, if you have Drake Maye as the quarterback 1 in the 2024 NFL draft class, then I don't think either of us are going to argue with you, because there's certainly an argument to be made. It isn't personally what I think, but I can absolutely understand why someone would put Drake Maye ahead. And I think it would be the same for NFL teams, right? And this is where situation matters so much, because for a prospect entering the NFL, as to whether they succeed or not, it all comes down to the right situation and the right circumstance. And that goes for both Caleb Williams and Drake Maye, where they both have the ability to be outstanding pros. But if Maye finds himself in the better situation or the right situation, and Caleb Williams doesn't, then he's going to have more success in the NFL. That's just how it will be. That we've seen that throughout the NFL and throughout history.
We've just seen that in the last draft, haven't we? The first few games, CJ Stroud is in a better situation than Bryce Young is at the moment. We're not comparing those as players, but quarterback 1, quarterback 2 last year. CJ Stroud seems to have had the better start because he's been put in that better situation.
Yeah, and this is where the discussion is always evolving, right? We'll still argue. There's still some time left in the season. We'll let that play out, and then say the conversation could well change again depending on where these guys get drafted, which is the main thing. So yeah, currently there's I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but just as we've shown there, I think there's a way of having a decent conversation about it, and they're definitely closer than we think.
Yeah, I would agree. And at the moment, unless there's a major happening, they are going to be the quarterback 1 and 2 that most people have. I can't see that there's going to be anybody gets in that 1 and 2 group. There's an interesting conversation to be had about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 later on. But we'll leave that for another day, because we could be on a very, very long podcast if we start going down that route.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add there?
I think we've talked longer than we planned to about these two guys, if I'm honest. But quarterbacks, we could talk all day, but we've got plenty to get through. So yeah, I think we'll leave it there.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case. It's just such an interesting discussion between these two. And I suppose before we move on, we'd love to know, our audience, what you think. Who is your quarterback 1 right now? Do you think Drake Maye is closer to Caleb Williams than expected, or do you maybe agree or disagree with the points that we made? Head over to YouTube if you're not there already. Leave them in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.